Welcome back. And so we start off with the first leg of our conversation this morning, which will be a focus on the Ondo off-cycle 2024 governorship election to see what lessons are there to learn from that process. Of course, some of which would be a record a number of votes polled by the winner, incumbent Lucky Aiyedatiwa, 366,781 votes or thereabout, more than that of the closest challenger by more than 200,000, and of course more than the results polled by past winners in the last 8 years of that election. And of course, there are also other factors to consider, considering the total number of votes polled by the winner and the closest challengers in comparison to what we saw in other elections, which will speak to voter turnout. But before, I get into all of the levels of conversation, we have joining us to give us an aerial view of what transpired on Saturday, the program's director for YIAGA Africa, Cynthia Mbamalu. Good morning and welcome to the program, Cynthia. And we also have Mr. Jide Ojo, who has also joined us, public affairs analyst. Both join us via Zoom. Thank you very much, gentleman and lady, for coming on the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
So, Cynthia, I'm going to start with you. We can see that YIAGA Africa already put out a statement, more than a statement, really, a document, covering the election, telling us what exactly happened. But I want us to give us an aerial view of the process and the performance of security all the agencies, so to speak, INEC, security agencies, and all of us deployed for the exercise.
Thank you. Good morning. And I think the first thing is to commend the people of Ondo. For the peaceful conduct in the elections. This is one of the elections that was relatively quiet and calm. Let's use the word calm. And I think we spoke in the pre-elections, before the elections, and we talked about how it seemed there's some sort of tranquility in the state. And I think it's just to commend the voters, the citizens, and also the stakeholders, especially the security agencies and the Electoral Commission, for the work that was done in these elections. And so if we think about the elections, I will begin first with our observation as it relates to the process. And we had shared our findings earlier on Elections Day that for these elections, we had little challenges related to logistics. We had better management of logistics in these elections, which was why by 10:30 a.m., about 91% of our polling units in the state had opened and the process of accreditation had commenced. And that for us is improvement if you compare that with what we had in Edo, for instance, Edo, which is the most recent off-cycle elections that we had in Nigeria. And then we also had instances where the beavers had issues, but they were resolved as at when due. And so, for instance, in 89% of our polling units sampled, in 89%, the beavers functioned optimally without any particular issue. And in 10%, when there was an issue with the laptop, with the beavers, they had the tech support from INEC that resolved those issues. So those beavers devices where their issues were addressed as at the period where the program where the election was going on. In fact, so one of the polling units where there was a delay in fixing it and voters got quite agitated, security agencies stepped in to help calm people down and keep the polling unit orderly, while INEC tried to resolve the issue. In one of the polling units, about 1% of the polling unit, the beavers was changed, so they had to be fixed. And so I think for that is just to commend the proactive nature within which these responses were done and the timely nature within which they were addressed on elections, especially as it relates to the beaver, because we know that the beavers is an important part of our election. So that was one part. The other for us was also the level of compliance with the rules as it came to results management. So from the point of counting of the polling unit, we had less reports of agents disagreeing with results at the polling unit level. And our data did show that in over 95% of the polling units, both the APC agent and the PDP agent countersigned and received copies of the result sheet from EC8A at the polling unit. Usually, when you have discrepancies at the polling unit, that is when you begin to track that there may be a problem or an issue with the process. And so moving from the PUs to the collation levels, we didn't have major reports of disruption of the process at the local government levels, especially the local government results collation levels. And so if you look at the process, our reports, aside from where we had the beavers malfunction and then instances of disability, and I'll talk a bit about that much later, most of the challenges that were observed were addressed on the go. And I think that in itself shows better planning as it relates to logistics. You talked about security conduct. We did have better conduct of security personnel in these elections, unlike what we saw in previous elections. In fact, for the areas I moved around, I had little harassment from security agencies. I know in Edo, we had at one point security officials, the police asking us to come down, show our tags, ask us questions, even though we had our accreditation with us. And we had reports from other groups that experienced that. But in Ondo, we didn't have a lot of that. There were one or two instances where that reporters had expressed that they were stopped and questioned. But those were the only instance. And in our data showed that in about 7% of the polling units, the security officials were unprofessional. And so if you think about that, where we had reports of misconduct from security personnel were in 7% of the polling units. Same also for the INEC personnel. So about in 7% of polling units where we got reports that the officials were unprofessional. So that in itself helped us also assess the results. And our data on the result did indicate that for turnouts, for instance, because before the announcement, we had issued our turnout data to show that, yes, we had the data on results already, and we're waiting for the Electoral Commission to announce. And once they announce, we will share our findings on the results. Our turnout had projected about 24%, 24.8% turnout of voters. And that also fell within what the Electoral Commission announced. We had about 24.8%. And then for the vote shares, we had indicated that the All Progressives Congress candidates would receive between 73%, 72 to 75% of the vote. And INEC's data did indicate that the APC candidates received about 73% of the total vote cast. And so it fell within our margin. Can you hear me?
Yes, I just wanted to butt in so I can bring in Mr. Ojo. The projections, apparently your projections aligned with INEC's results. So let me bring in Mr. Ojo on this one. Maybe I'll delve into, besides election management, to things like the politics of it. Straight question is, Mr. Ojo, in your view, you've been following this space attentively. What is the magic wand the APC used that gave them this margin in terms of result? And what did the PDP do wrong?
Thank you, Geoffrey. Good morning, Nigerians. Happy New Week. Yes, I like that question because it affords me opportunity to bring in the supernatural perspective to this victory of Lucky Aiyedatiwa. If you read what was published in the Nation newspaper of 7th of November 2024, which is this month, there is a report which I flagged, which is very interesting. And the report says that the Oruja of Odigbo Kingdom, Odigbo is one of the towns in Ondo State. When the campaign train of APC went there, the traditional ruler of Odigbo, the Oruja of Odigbo, told the campaign team that the Ifa Oracle has chosen Lucky Orimisan Aiyedatiwa as the next governor of Ondo State. It sounds funny, but I was waiting whether that prediction will come true yesterday. And it did. It did. Even though this is not kingship, it's not monarchy, but tells me something, that our people are not as ignorant of what happens, that some people have even gone to consult Oracle to know who will be the next governor of Ondo State, and it happens. That's number one. Number two, when you look at what is in the name, Lucky Orimisaye Dasiwa, there was a video that trended late last year after the demise of Oluwarotimi Akeredolu, where during the inauguration of Lucky Ayedatiwa as the deputy governor 4 years ago, 3 years ago actually, the former governor, the late former governor, said there must be something in the name. How come this man, you are Lucky Ayedatiwa? Aren't you lucky? Because it was Agbola Ajayi that possibly would have been his running mate in his second term if he had not defected from APC to PDP and then Zeni Labour Party, only to come back to PDP after he lost 4 years ago to now be the candidate. So, again, what is in the name? The number 3 question is, I saw this contest as contest between the federal and the state. President Bola Tinubu perhaps have ambition for re-election in 2027. And having lost, APC having lost Osun and Lagos in the last presidential election, and having lost Oyo and Osun in the last governorship election, will not want to be humiliated with the loss of Ondo to PDP. So they put everything in the armory to fight this electoral war. Resources, you could see the number of governors that were at the Alagbaka government house yesterday. You know, the national chairman of the party was there. Governor of Lagos was there. Opus Odima of Imo was there. Several other governors were there. Party chieftains, senators, all of them were there at the government house. And you could see that they already envisaged that the victory is theirs. So they didn't spare resources, whether it's vote buying, whether it's whatever it is they needed to do, they did. Because they also have issue, APC also have issue with its primaries. Don't forget, there are some of the candidates who contested against Ayedatiwa who were his co-contestants when they had APC primaries early this year. But President Tinubu was able to masterfully reconcile the warring factions. Recall that someone like Senator Jimoh Ibrahim even took the party to court after the party primaries, that there was no primary, and a couple of others also filed suit. But President Tinubu was able to bring all of them together, appeal to them in the interest of the party, let the governor seek a re-election. And that was what happened. You recall that it's online that Senator Jimoh Ibrahim said President Tinubu personally called him that he should go and withdraw his suit from the court, which he did. And someone like Olushola Oke, who happens to have been a frontline aspirant for this position, also got reconciled and was campaigning with Ayedatiwa in the lead up to the election. So quite a number of things were done right by APC.
All right. Let's look at other things that may have been done, to ensure that the story is not one of humiliation, as you have said. And I'm going to refer to, the statement by YIAGA Africa. I'm coming to you now, Cynthia. From your statement, your document, reports from polling unit observers revealed that INEC polling officials were unprofessional and partisan in 7% of polling units. Your document also captures reports that security personnel were present in all polling units observed, but in addition, they were unprofessional and partisan in 7% of the polling units. Just to mention a few high points from your document, and that element of vote buying, which according to the opposition was massive and clandestine in many polling units. How did that contribute to the record number of polls turned in by the winner and incumbent?
Well, I'm glad you actually made reference to that. Like I had indicated, in 7%, they were non-partisan and they were unprofessional. But the thing around vote buying was actually quite an eyesore in these elections. Our data did show that in some locations you had vote buying that was as high as 20,000 naira per voter. The least amount we recorded was 5,000 naira. So it was between 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 naira that was paid to voters that was used to buy votes in different parts of the state. And then we also indicated that in the pre-elections phase, in fact, the voter inducement had commenced early with both food items and then most importantly, money is given out. And I think this is one of the things we're beginning to see in our elections. And for the Ondo elections, money must have also had its own factor, considering that we had low voter turnout. But the voters that came out, in fact, in some locations, you had voters complaining to observers, even some international observers come. Some of them, it was open, saying, oh, we were giving this, we were promised this, and we're giving lesser amount, or openly collecting the money. You had instances, if you look at our data also, you see instances where we highlighted that we had voters who, after thumb printing, were showing their ballot papers to party agents, or there was a way they would thumbprint before they put the ballot paper in the ballot box. They would indicate, so someone else could see how the voter thumbprinted on the ballot paper. So those were even signs or evidence to show that, oh, I've done what I ought to do. I hope to get my pay after this. And then I think that is becoming a major challenge in this election, because money was an important factor in these elections. Yes, with all, I know some of the context that may have been provided by Judy, it also played out in the elections, but money was big, and it's unfortunate that money is beginning to play an important role in determining who emerges in the vote in the elections. But let's be clear, it was not a one-sided money vote buying contest. It was a contest rather between the two parties in particular, because our report did indicate that we recorded votes buying done by both the APC and the PDP agents and supporters in the field during the elections. But usually the question is who has more money or more resources to buy more votes, and I think that is where the bigger question ought to come in. However, while we can say that vote buying is becoming a major issue, I think for us it's on the part of the security, because we're expecting to see a lot more arrests of vote buyers or electoral offenders and subsequent prosecution, because that is one way to curb that. That is on the one hand. On the other hand, is a call to the political parties, to the candidates and politicians. We can't continue this trend of using money to influence the electoral process. I think it raises a bigger question on the legitimacy of even an electoral outcome, but also another question around the threat to the democratic process itself, because when voters become so transactional, it also affects how they appreciate democracy and appreciate the value of their vote. So we can say money did have an influence in these elections. But I think my last point on this would also be that Ondo in the pre-election space was quite calm. So even the campaigns were not as heated as would expect. And we do, from our projection, there seems to have been some sort of elite consensus at some point that, hey, this guy is completing the term of the former governor, whom we lost sadly last year. Perhaps let him just conclude this term. Our projection actually indicates that we would have a lot more contest in the next elections in 4 years' time. And that is because at that point, there would be less political sentiment and less consensus, would put it that way. We've seen this happen previously. And perhaps whether it's connected to the name or the other, I mean, once upon a time, we did say our former president, His Excellency Goodluck Jonathan, also had the name Good Luck, and that may have also played out. But we also, if you remember, the 2011 elections and the outcome of that elections, and then the contest that we saw in 2015, you would also understand that there are also certain political conversations and political negotiations that also happens in the space. And what is left at this point is for the president, the governor-elect, as the case is in Ondo, to prove to the voters that yes, he did deserve their vote and he deserves to be the governor of the state by providing leadership that is needed in this state.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, what matters is the quality of leadership and how that impacts on the lives of the average everyday person in Ondo State.
Mr. Ojo, I want to piggyback on what Cynthia has said. The system should be zero tolerance to all forms of fraud and criminality. Buying votes or vote buying is a crime. Sometimes people say Nigerian election is a battle of the better riga. So YIAGA Africa had mentioned 7%. That is a lot, no matter how you want to look at it, because people's voices were taken away, or there's an enterprise in this whole process, which shouldn't be at the end of the day. The challenge here is that there are 2 or 3 layers of checks. The INEC official is supposed not to be complicit in this. 7% were complicit. The police is supposed to check the INEC and everybody. The police 7% complicit. Now everything will result to the court. And we've mentioned the fact that the number of arrests that were supposed to be made were not sufficient enough to show that there is a move to deter people from, engaging in this, whether the buyer or the seller. All of them are all committing crime. Where do we go from here? Because politics is expensive, we know. But in saner climes, it has to do with adverts and campaigns. But our own is about buying votes. What do we do?
What we need to do, Geoffrey, is to improve the standard of living of average citizens so that whatever is being on offer will not appeal to them. I'm not sure someone will offer you 50,000 to get your vote and you will concede, because I assume you have a well-paying job, and you are politically aware. You know the implication of selling your vote. Majority of people who are involved in this, they don't reason the way you and I will reason. Their own reasoning is that, oh, look at the rising cost of living, look at how difficult it is for me to survive on day-to-day basis. So if I have somebody, I've not committed, I've not killed anybody, somebody is offering me a bag of rice. YIAGA Africa flagged a couple of weeks ago that even ahead of Saturday's election, there is a party, I don't want to presume which party it is so that I'm not accused of bias, that one of the dominant parties had started distributing fertilizers and grains, gari, to different wards. And that is voter inducement, which is also criminalized by our electoral law. But how would you resist a situation where over half of the population is in abject poverty, where they don't know where their next meal will come from? We may want to say, oh, it's poverty of ideas and all of that. That is elitist in my own view. There is also the consciousness that, look, even if I don't take, these people will win at the end of the day. Look at the state of infrastructure in Ondo State. It's very appalling. It's very appalling. I saw one of the tweets that a viewer, which was flagged before we came on set, where the person congratulated the governor, but was calling his attention to the Akura-Ijare Road. The state of roads in Ondo is very appalling. And these are the kind of things that people felt such resources should have been used to effect, improve on the state of social amenities, improve on the standard of living of citizens. Then they will be able to resist any attempt at inducing them to vote one way or the other.
Indeed, Mr. Ojo, if an inventory of the funds deployed to vote buying were to be taken, we might be surprised about the amount to be getting over the years. But let's wrap up with this point that is also just as important. And I'm bringing this to you, Cynthia. Just days to the election, we had a conversation on the functionality of the BVAS, the three-pronged functionality, but the third one, which is supposed to upload the biodata, so to speak, of all voters accredited, which has been disabled by the commission. Of course, if you checked the website, there is a reason provided by INEC, which is, delayed synchronization. We wonder how that significantly impacts on the integrity of the exercise, particularly for this exercise and maybe Ondo, Edo election as well. And besides that, from all of the observations of those factors that produce an election that is supposed to be considered free and fair, would you say that all of them have worked together to produce a free and fair election in this exercise, and one with integrity as well?
Well, I think I'll start from the easy one. When we talk about the freeness or the free or the fairness of an electoral process, there are several other factors to look at. Even as simple as how money played a role in the elections impact on how fair the process is, because what it means is it undermines the quality of competition by all stakeholders, because it's about who has most monies and more spread to influence people. And so there are several factors, which is why we hardly use the term, or in our statement, we've not used the term free fair in the process, but it did meet some of the integrity tests that we did set earlier, especially as it relates to the application of the compliance of the rules by the Electoral Commission at the officials at the different levels, especially the coalition level. But you asked an important question on the beavers, and I think I'll look at it from two perspectives. First is the question about the functionalities, and then also how it uploads results on the INEX result viewing portal. The first part of functionality, one of our recommendations actually is the need for the beavers to undergo constant update and upgrade. That is because for these elections, we did see it function optimally in 89% of polling units, but you also had in about 11% where there were challenges with the beavers, and so that in itself indicates that perhaps we need to have better updates on that, because we've recorded higher percentages in previous elections. But we know that technologies, when they are new, they perform a lot more better. But the older they get, you need to improve on it. So I think that was one part we called on the Electoral Commission, that we need beavers to function optimally at all points, at least in 90%, in the higher 90%, or at the polling unit. But the result part you talked about, we need to start seeing the accredited data on the result viewing platform, because it's important for us, because that is the figure we use in determining overvoting. And we, as voters, as citizens, it's important that such a platform, beyond just uploading the result.
Oh dear, just as we're getting to that point where Cynthia was providing very important information as far as the functionality is concerned, we hope that she would return in just a moment to land on that point. It appears as if the network has not been clement at this end beat of the conversation, but we must wrap up at this point so that we can progress on the program. We must thank you very much, Mr. Jide Ojo, a public affairs analyst, for joining us on the program. And thank you also, Cynthia Mbamalu, programs director for YIAGA Africa, who took time out of a very difficult schedule to be with us this morning. We believe Cynthia has a flight to catch. Thank you so much, Cynthia and Mr. Ojo, for coming through. I will take a break from this point now and move on to the next bit of our conversation, which is also important for elections as well, and that is the judiciary. Stay with us, we'll be right back.